It was an early winter morning. Wiz Kid was standing outside his home, waiting for his friend Curly Wins to pick him up. Ever since Curly Wins got his own car, he had to pick up his friend to school, and since Wiz Kid would have to be more stressful to be up earlier to even have to get the school bus in time. And that didn't work for him so much. But since after his friend got his own car, he asked Curly Wins if he could pick him up from school to drive him to school at the same time. And since he didn't live as far from school himself, and Curly Wins said sure, I mean he can do that. And every time on that has happened for about 6 months now. But this particular morning, everything is going to be changed. As on the way on the stool, they small talked about the winter holidays break soon, and they talked what they were going to do. Curly Wins mentioned that he's going to be out of town for a couple of days with his family to see some other relatives. And the Wiz Kid said that he was going to be with his own parents back home. So then they said maybe they could spend some time just hang out before they had to go for the holiday. Maybe go to the mall, maybe play some arcade games, or just hang out at either their homes. Just do something. And of course, Curly Wins maybe thought about how about seeing a movie and just having some pizza and some sort of things. And Whiskey thought that was a good idea. So everything was going well between them. That's the close friendship they had. Ever since after the Sirens was defeated back in school, everyone has getting closer as friends. But there were a new few relationships that had appeared in school for time now. Even even Curly Winslow had a wish that he could have his own special someone at some point. He used to have a crush on Rarity, but unfortunately he knew that he wouldn't have any chance against her, so he decided maybe that he would try to find someone else to be with. But after some time he decided to focus on the schools instead. He decided to focus on his studies and school sports. And he was good at sports like soccer and basketball, and he had also a good student. For sometimes even helped Wiz Kid with the homework, which he didn't mind since they were good friends and they helped each other with some other things like school projects or anything. And when the holiday came, both decided to spend some time to be at Curly Wayne's home to watch some movie and have some pizza. And ever since the day that Curly Wayne's going to leave town with the day after, so they decided to just hang out at his place. And after course, everything was just normal, and they had a great time. They just watched some comedy movies, some action movies, just great time to get to have some friends. They even had some just great time, and after they had watched some movies, they played some cards, just hang out as they normally do. And of course, they said goodbye to each other later in the afternoon and wished each other Merry Christmas and promised to see each other when Curly Wins get back home from the holiday. And of course, as the time passed and the holiday was over and New Year's Eve had passed, but one day though, when Wiz Kid was outside for a walk in the neighborhood, he was just walking around and just enjoying the time. Since it was a sunny day, just small cold wind. But suddenly, when he was about to cross the street, he heard a screeching sound, and it turns out when he turned around, he saw a car. A car was approaching from the street, and he saw the driver try to brake when the driver saw him and tried to brake to try to stop the car on the brakes, but since there was ice on the street, it wasn't enough time for him to push the brakes, but he tried to avoid Wiz Kid, but unfortunately, it didn't help. The car wasn't enough speed, so he hit Wiz Kid on the windshield and he fell to the ground unconscious. Another worker saw what happened and called for the ambulance. But the police then asked the man how this accident happened, and he explained that he saw Wiz Kid was about to cross the street, but he tried to hit the brakes, and he did that. And the police later investigated the car and they found out there was nothing wrong with the car, not the brakes. And they saw there was ice on the street, even though some sand or salt on it. But the car's brakes and tires couldn't stop in time. So the man wasn't punished for it because it was a random accident. And Wiz Kid, the severe of his injuries was so far severe. Was hit so hard he breaks both his legs, 4 ribs, and had severe concussion. And he was in coma. Every one of his friends knew about this. His parents were so worried, terrified. This was the only way would probably lose their own son. And his best friend, Curly Wins, was completely unaware of what happened. Because only a few days after New Year's Eve, when he came back though, he was going over to Wiz Kid's home to see if he was maybe want to hang out or something. But his parents wasn't even home. And he saw no one was home. So he walked over to their neighbor and asked if Wiz Kid was home, or at least his family. And they asked him and then said to him, "Did you know?" And he shook his head and asked, "What about what?" Wiz Kid was at the hospital, and he asked, "Was something wrong with him?" Then the neighbor mentioned about this car accident only a few days after New Year's Eve. Curly Wins was terrified. His own best friend was in hospital in coma, and according to doctors, from what Curly Wiz Kid's family had told the neighbors, that there might be no chance he will wake up from it. And when Curly Wins asked his friends about this, they all confirmed about it, and they were all terrified. Only this way maybe they would lose a friend, a good friend who has so kind to all of them, and this happened to him. Curly Wins drives all the way to the hospital, where he meets his parents, and they all knew about him. That's he's a good friend, and they were saying that he was terrified after he just found out. Curly Wins sat with Wiz Kid's side for 2 hours, just trying to talk to him, if he hopes that maybe that he could hear him and that he can wake up from the coma. Because he had heard some stories that people has coming out from this coma after just hearing someone particular special, someone close to him, like a friend or loved one, talking to it. He has so strong hopes that Wiz Kid would wake up from the coma and return. Days passed, weeks passed, and even a few months have passed, but he was still in deep coma. Most of his parents are about to give up hope that he will never come out of the coma. And the doctors had done some tests and seen, but it seems to no reaction at all. They had told his parents that they would consider the possibility that their son will never come out of the coma, and that they maybe had to let him go. When Curly Wins was getting to know about this from some of his friends, he was furious. Most of all, furious and terrified. He would lose his oldest best friend. He had a hope that Wiz Kid would make it, came out of the coma, and everything would be back to normal. He even spent time almost every single day for the past few months by the side of Wiz Kid, hoping, praying that he will wake up from the coma. But on the day before, when his parents maybe decided it was time to let him go, he told something to Wiz Kid, more like a whisper. Wiz Kid, for the past few weeks, after I just found out about this, I have been thinking all much about us. You're my best friend. But for lately, I have been thinking more than that. To me, you're so much more important. I I believe that I have fallen in love with you. Please, Wiz Kid, please come out of the coma. Please wake up. I cannot stand to see you here and in the thought that I might lose you. You are so much important to me. Please wake up. And after that he left. The day after, his parents had decided maybe it was time to let their son go. But when just before they was about to do what they needed to do, they heard a sound. They turned around and saw that Wiz Kid was moaning, or at least making some sounds, and slowly opened his eyes. And the doctor was just equally surprised at seeing that Wiz Kid had actually woken up from the coma. And soon all the friends were also informed about this. And everyone was really surprised that he actually did come out of the coma. But most of all, Curly Wins was just beyond overjoyed that his friend had come out of the coma. He even went to see him the day after he came out of the coma. And Curly Wins did mention that he had been by his side the whole time. He didn't leave. He has been in his side every single day after he found out. Because he knew that he is so important to him. And then Wiz Kid mentioned something that he did hear him. That he said that he knew that and even heard that Curly Wins had a crush on him. Curly Wins just blushed and said, "Oh, you heard it?" And Wiz Kid smiled and said, "Yes." And then Wiz Kid revealed something. For the past year, he had been interested in him, but he was so scared how to tell him, knowing the possibility that Curly Wins probably would not like him back in the same way. And Curly Wins told him that he will be with him only if he was willing to be that. And of course, though, Curly Wins was beyond happy when Wiz Kid said he wanted to be with him as his own boyfriend. But he asked them if they should tell someone about this, like his parents or their friends, because Curly Wins didn't know how either their families would react to this news. And Wiz Kid decided maybe it was best to wait until his fully recovered after all this. And Curly Wins agreed. So they decided to keep this a secret. So after some time when Wiz Kid was allowed to go home, Curly Wins decided to be at his side, even at his home from time to time, as much as he could be. At first, they managed to hide this secret quite well until one day when Curly Wind's mom had walked in on them just sitting on his bed watching a movie while kissing. Curly Wins was just terrified. He had no idea what to react or how what to say, but his mother didn't say much. She just smiled and nodded and closed the door. And the same evening after when Wiz Kid had gone home, Curly Wins had a talk with his parents. They both told him that they were just happy for him. They didn't hate when he was that he was dating his best friend. They were supportive. And after Curly Wins had his talk with his parents, he called Wiz Kid and told him. And Wiz Kid, he had told his own parents about this, but believing but the thought that maybe Curly Wins' mom had already told his parents about this. But it turns out she didn't. She had never told anyone about this. And after they had revealed this secret to their parents, they told some of the closest friends, and soon everyone knew about this. And of course, nothing was much against this. All the friends was just open and supportive to their relationship. Even the first, they were very scared, skeptical. Some of the friends might be um, against this entire relationship, but they all were just happy and supportive for all of them. Even for the most parts, everything was just going well between them. Every one of their friends was just happy to see how happy they were being together. Even when they had this big fight during the summer break. During the summer break, they had some plans what to do during the summer. Wiz Kid wanted to go to see some of the museums, while Curly Wins maybe wanted to just stay at home or just go to the park or maybe to the beach, just having a good time there. But even though when Wiz Kid wanted to go to the museum one day, but Curly Wins didn't want to go maybe to the park. So they had an argument about that, which sometimes they didn't speak with each other for about a few days. But the biggest fight they had, though, happened before the end of summer break when they didn't speak for each other for almost entire 3 whole months. Even during all this time, they had no idea. They refused to even look at each other. They didn't talk to each other. And if someone of their friends had just asked what's going on, if they were still dating or have they broken up or something, but they said that they haven't broken up, just they didn't stand talking to each other at the moment. But since after the 3 months had passed, though, everything was just back to normal. They both have realized how stupid this big fight was about, even. So they decided just move on from the big fight and try to work it out, which they did. But then it happened again. This time, though, this big fight was so close, just so close, that it could have ended up their relationship. But after Wiz Kid had asked Curly Wins for forgiveness, which he did accepted, they both realized this isn't worth it to fighting over some stupid things. Even after all that happened, they all were just happy that they can work out their problems, their difficulties, and even solve any particular conflict before they end up in a bitter fight. And even after some time after their relationship had moved on, they still remain strong in their relationship. And even though After they both had finished school, Curly Wins. He decided to work as an as a gym instructor at a local gym. And Wiz Kid, he actually worked at a local computer store or electronics store. And they both actually had a great time on there. They both loved their work. It was so great between them. And even after 2 years after they had been finished school, they had actually found a small place in town which they moved in together. But after nearly 5 years of being dating, Wiz Kid and Curly Wins had talked about if they would probably one day get married and have a family of their own. And of course, they thought about it. But Wiz Kid didn't know. In secret, Curly Wins had bought a ring, and he was going to propose to Wiz Kid on their 5th year's anniversary, which he did, and Wiz Kid said yes immediately. After both families and friends, all their friends, was informed, they were equally overjoyed. They even though after this wedding, at the wedding, Wiz Kid had asked Flash to be his best man, and Curly Wins had asked Bulk Biceps to be his best man. And even all of this happened, they all had this a great time at the party which Pinky had organized for them. And after it was time for them to go on their honeymoon, they actually went to a cabin which they had rented for about a week, and there they had this amazing time with watching the stars and every night, having just barbecue sometimes and almost every day, just having a romantic time. And after being married for about 2 years, both had decided maybe it was time to start their own family. So they actually went to a local orphanage in town to adopt to try to maybe adopt a child. And they managed to adopt two boys who was brothers. One was 10, the other one was 8. But only 2 years later, though, they decided to adopt another child. But this time, they adopted a daughter who was about 5 at the time. And Curly Wins and Wiz Kid both had agreed if they had even revealed their feelings towards each other, they would never have found a true love and have been this happy. Even after all this event in their lives, after Wiz Kid accident years earlier, and those big fights they had over time, their relationship had remained strong. They were strong as the rock, and both never want to be that in a big fight ever again. And that's how Curly Wins and Wiz Kid found a true love, got a big family. The end.